Hello everyone, my name is Tiffany. I'm the Tipsy Artist. Today we are going to be painting this beautiful bison and it's just lovely. So I'm going to teach you lots of fun abstracting techniques and we're going to be working with lots of beautiful bold color. So I want to give you a visual of this and then we are going to be shifting our camera view here in just a few minutes to an aerial view so that you can get a really nice close-up look as we progress through this painting. So I'm going to have this with us. I'm going to go ahead and place it down here. And then let's go ahead and talk about the traceables. So all of our painting kits come with a traceable so that all the line art is completely done for you in the beginning. And we're going to go ahead and talk about how this is done. So we do have transfer paper in your kit. We have the traceable here. And then of course the canvas. And then with this particular painting, we do want to go ahead and this transfer, we do want to go ahead and make sure we share with you a couple of really good tips here. And we do have a full tutorial on this whole process. You can go look at that too. But we want to make sure that you place the transfer paper dull gray side up, shiny black side down. And then I just center it. I only tape up at the top here. And with this particular design, I want to make sure that the feet are in the design. So I go ahead and just level it up to the bottom of the canvas. So there is a little bit of overlap on this side. So it's about 1/2 inch of overlap of the paper that will fold over the top of the canvas. So I tape down my transfer paper first, then I tape down the uh, traceable next, and just tape up at the top. We want to make sure that all this is free and clear so that as you do your tracing, you can constantly lift up and check your work as you go to make sure that you have all of that done. So, because once you lift this off, then there's really no way to put it back in the exact same spot. So you got to make sure and get all the trace done that you want, and then you'll be set. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start shifting gears here. Once you're done with this, you can just lift this off. And then we're going to change our camera view here. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and go here and then here. All right, awesome. All right, so we're all set up and we've got all the supplies that you need. Again, you've got a really beautiful paint kit that comes lots of paint. And I'm using up some old stuff today, recycling. And then of course I've got a little bit of a head start here. I went ahead and placed out some titanium white and some black. We do have a lot more color that's going to come in today. If you've got the kit with, the only thing you need to go and get on your own will be the water. Everything else comes with the kit. So there's an apron in here, some napkins, a little mixing plate, all your paint here. And then let's talk about, we use the pencil to do the trace. We've got that done. And then your kit also comes with a permanent marker. I do go ahead and do a little bit of the outlining here around the edges to go ahead and get that placed in. That's going to come in really handy. So as we do our background paint, this line will bleed through and that way it'll preserve the trace that we have in place. So I really like that. It's a nice little help for beginners. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the mama brush. By the way, we have a cute little family of brushes to help us paint. So we have your mama brush, then we have little buddy, and then we have little bit. All right, so here we go. We're going to add just a little bit of water to our brush here. Just go ahead and make sure that it's nice and flexible. And I'm going to start to mix up this beautiful background here. So I've got a good start with the titanium white here. And then I've got some Mars Black on there as well. And when you're using your new paints, they will have a little bit, they'll have a foil liner at the top. You will have to lift that off to get that paint out of there. All right, next up, I'm going to be using some primary cyan blue. So we'll just do a nice little dollop there. And that'll give us a great start. Okay. And you know what? I'm noticing Well, you know what? We'll work all this in, and then when we get to this is a little bit of brown in the mix. We'll start to mix up some brown later on too. I'm going to go ahead and just pick up a nice big dollop of the white, and then do a little tiny touch of that primary cyan blue. We'll start with that. That's really pretty. And we're just going to start to push this onto the canvas. We're going to make like the letter X back and forth. And I'm also going to, as I go, alternate the mix a little bit with just pure amounts of titanium white pushed in there. And just mix that back and forth. Now we've also got just little shades of our slate coming in here with hints of gray. So I'm going to just barely touch into the black and the white. So we've got that nice gray in there too. So I'll work this in as well. As I get near the edge here, I'm just going to get right next to it. And I start to push in a little bit of the gray, continue mixing in just pure white as well. So now we've got a nice mix of the gray, the white, and then that really pretty light blue that we mixed up. And this is really playful. Every time I paint this, it will be a little bit different. So have fun with it and don't expect it to be exactly the same. You can even come in with tiny amounts of just that pure blue too, like it's a little bit more intense here. So I can work that back in as well. All right, so we've also got a little bit of some Viridian coming into the mix. Here's a little bit of that. So we'll do a little pea-sized dollop there. And brown is right on the tails of that. So I'm gonna let this rest in the water for a moment, and then we're gonna mix up a tiny amount of brown. To do that, we need a little bit of cadmium orange. We'll do a little pea-sized amount of that. Use little buddy here. We're gonna mix up some black and some cadmium orange, and that will give us brown. Now that brown's really light, so I'm going to put in a little bit more orange with the black. That's going to lighten up that brown. Then I'm going to add a little bit of this white to it, and that'll make a really light brown. And when you rinse your brush, apply a little bit of firm pressure, spin it round and round and round, and then just rinse out till clear. Go ahead and go back in with our I'm not going to be too overly cautious with the rinse out on this brush because we're going back in with the same color. I'm going to go ahead and fire off the handle a little bit because I don't want a water drop there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and you're working in some of this pretty light blue. Kind of re-wet this so that it's very blendable, because acrylic paint will set up and dry very quickly. So as soon as it dries, then you're not going to be able to have that nice soft transition between the two colors. So now I'm going to touch into that Viridian just a little bit. And I'll work that in. See how we have that nice soft fade? So it's just wet to wet paint. That's really crucial. So my light blue was very wet, and then of course this was fresh wet paint. So then we had a nice soft transition between the two. And it's just lots of little crisscross strokes, just back and forth. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of that light brown too. Same thing, both paints are very fresh and wet, so they're going to have a nice fade between the two. And a little bit of white now, lightening that way up. And I'm going to go ahead and let this light color just start to extend all the way across. Adding some more white to really lighten it up a little bit. Now, this may have set up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and take little buddy, have him help me out a little bit, and re-wet with some of that light blue. Feather that out back and forth, do that little crisscross stroke. All right, now this is nice and wet in there, so I'm going to go ahead and work into that now. So I had to have my wet to wet paint so it has a nice soft transition. All right, now I can be a little bit more playful now and just start to add in a little bit of this Viridian. And a little bit of that blue too. We're going to be working that in as well. And by the way, since this is all outlined, for some of you, it may be a little bit easier to kind of sweep through a little bit and see how it's bleeding through. Have a little bit more freedom. And that's why we did it. So instead of trying to get in between each leg, it's a little easier to kind of sweep it through and be a little bit more playful with those brush strokes. I'm going to add a little bit of white to that too. And get some nice soft transition in here. So it's a lot easier to work back and forth now, and we're still not losing the legs. I can still see those very clearly. And then I'm going to go ahead and start to push in more of the blue and the black. Now with that, you don't want to go through the legs on that because it's so dark, then you will lose your legs. So then you are going to have to be a little bit more meticulous about the cutting in as you go. But we try to keep it easy on ourselves as long as we can. Now we're going to kind of feather this back and forth here into that mix. Little bitty cross strokes back and forth. Light hand. I'll use my little buddy here to work that in a little bit more. And this is our primary cyan blue and our Mars black. We're just working this in here at the base. And lots of repetition and crisscrossing back and forth in here. Working in that groundwork. It's coming almost mostly black. And then let's go ahead and rinse out. Dry off a little bit here. And then let's pick up a little bit of this white, thinning them out, and we'll kind of work back in to this top, coming from the top down. It kind of softens this transition a little bit now. And just kind of crisscross it back and forth. And that will give us that nice soft fade into that next color. So again, working in, I just picked up pure titanium white, working back in between the legs. And it's still just a little bit wet in here with the black, so I'm just kind of working back into it. Like just short little strokes back and forth, crisscrossing it back and forth. So that gives us a nice soft fade down into it. Again, just picking up the white, crisscrossing it back and forth. So my brush picked up a lot of black on that, and so I have to keep wiping out the excess or else it'll stay very dark. And we want to bring in a little bit more light here. All right, it's looking beautiful. And then we're going to work over here. Kind of work back in a little bit more of that white. Make a soft transition. See, I just picked up a lot of black though, so I'm going to wipe that off, pick up more white. And rework some of that brown now. I'll sweep it across. You can always do that too. You can always bring back in some more of those shades and just kind of softly blend them back into that space. All right. So that is looking really pretty. So I'm cleaning and drying off Mama. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start to work in some beautiful bright colors now. I'll go ahead and remove this because we're going to go bright, and I don't want to muddy any of the brights. All right, so let's see here. Let's get some cadmium orange. And then some beautiful cadmium yellow. So as mentioned before, I'm using up old tubes, so that one's getting a little lean. Move that over to the side. And then let's do some primary yellow. So I have a bit of that to play with. Actually, there's just going to be a lot of color in here. So we'll start with those. And we still have our brown, which is our orange and our Mars black. We may play a little bit with that brown in there too. I'm going to start with the cadmium orange here, just in a pure state. And I'm going to come in over the top. And let's grab a little bit of that brown too. I'm going to have the brown come in at the very top here. You know, another color I want to be able to play with is my, actually, let's just go ahead and get out a few more colors here. Cadmium red. And just a little pea-sized dollop over there. And let's go ahead and grab our primary magenta for that beautiful pink. All right, so I'm going to continue on with my brown. I'm going to have it go along the back side here. And then we'll pick up a little bit more of our orange. Cadmium yellow. And see, I'm still doing, I love that little crisscross stroke. It just gives some nice texture. It helps me work back and forth and with those different shades here. And then pick up a little bit of that pink too. Kind of work that in. Just gonna crisscross it back and forth. So that pink in there, that's the primary magenta that adds a nice little bit of shading. And we're going to work back in a little bit of brown. We'll crisscross back and forth between that primary magenta and the brown. And then we'll go a little bit light. Go a little bit of that playful orange that brightens way up. So again, lots of just crisscross back and forth. Then we're going to start to lighten up a little bit. We're going to grab more primary yellow, more cadmium yellow. And this is definitely a very playful, fun process. You just want lots of texture. And it will certainly be a little bit different every time we do this. It's never exactly the same. So I'm just kind of working back and forth between little sections of the primary magenta, orange, a little bit of brown, lighten up here and there with our cadmium yellow, primary yellow. So we get a little bit dark around the horn here to accentuate it. So I'm going to make sure I go back into the brown around that. Just picked up a little bit of red too. That's our cadmium red. It's very fun, playful in this mix. And the brush hold is like a pencil hold. It's very familiar and comfortable. And lots of little tiny X's just back and forth. And a little bit of the light right here on the pad here in the front. With that brown, just kind of outlining it a little bit. And let's gather a bit more of that pink. I'll go white with the pink. It's actually that primary magenta. And a little bit of white. So again, down here, a little bit of primary magenta, a little bit of white. bit of red. You still feel how playful this is. It's so fun to do, very therapeutic. And you can see how bringing in the lights again, the very light primary yellow, working it back and over the top, just kind of crisscrossing it, brings in a lot more vibrant texture to the mix. Oh, hint of pink down here. Looks like he's got his nails done. That's kind of funny. Or red shoes on. We will come back in and not make it so uh, contrasting, but it's kind of funny at this point. All right, that just gave me a little tickle. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start to darken up a little bit now. Actually, I just saw one more place I want pink. But, yeah. So now we will. All right, so we still have a lot of our primary cyan blue. Our Viridian is out. And let's add a little bit of some violet too. There's a lot of that happening. And we also want to mix up some turquoise. So we can use all of these in pure form, violet, primary cyan blue, Viridian, but we also want to mix up some turquoise. So I'm going to do a dollop of the white, dollop of the Viridian, and then dollop of the primary cyan blue. So that's going to make a really beautiful turquoise. Again, that is primary cyan blue, Viridian, and white. And I'm going to go ahead and start to touch that turquoise into the back side here. So a tap, tap, tap in there. Going to be our base for this next section. And as I go, I'll pick up like little hints of the violet. Kind of touch, and again, it's that little crisscross stroke again, just kind of tap, 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 and then little X's. A little bit of that primary cyan blue too. We'll work in some of that. So now we're being very playful with more of the darks. So it's a lot of that crisscross back and forth, but now we're being playful with our primary cyan blue, our violet, and our turquoise, and perhaps even little touches of the Viridian here and there. Grab a little white with that violet, kind of see how that made that pop out as a much brighter purple. It's really fun too. Primary cyan blue here. And violet. And be very playful and fun with it, and just little tiny crisscross back and forth. Keeping it mostly dark in here, I'm sticking with a lot more heavier concentration of the primary cyan blue and the violet. I'm tapping down on those little feet, getting just a little touch of a darker shade in there. Also start to add a little bit of black in here too. That's another option around the base. Take it quite a bit darker. So as I kind of tap up into the space there, that's kind of a way to get a soft transition, but it's just a little tapping up over the top of that lighter area. And then I'm going to continue kind of crisscrossing it back and forth. And put the turquoise in here. Go back to that little crisscross stroke. And every now and again too, I can still kind of tap into that primary magenta, make little highlights. I'll touch into this a little bit. Primary magenta, that space. This is more of that little area of primary blue, primary cyan blue. A little bit more of that. And a touch of black. Touches of turquoise in here. And let's do little bits of Viridian. I haven't been working into my Viridian that much. It's kind of fun. We can go back and retroactively place little touches of that too. It's very vibrant and beautiful. Cyan blue and white there. Turquoise. More violet. So again, very playful, lots of colors, and just lots of tapping and crisscrossing back and forth. It's just amazing how it just starts to create this beautiful pattern all over. And we're getting around that little ear, and I want to make sure that it is accentuated in a way, you know, and the eye too. I want to make sure that that shape is also preserved. So I'm going to go light around the eye with more turquoise. Okay. Right up here. And we'll do a little bit of that lighter turquoise in the ear here. I'm going to go ahead and give everybody a little break here. And let's grab a little bit. And I'm going to do a real light lavender on the ear. I feathered out like little strokes of hair. So I'm kind of doing like a little soft curve here. Got a little more purple. Once we have our little ear now, and then we've got our little eye. I'm going to do a light gray. So here's some white and some black. I'm going to twirl the head of the brush into that. And then the eye up here. And then more of that blue in here. want my light horn, so I need a little bit of this brown, but I need to be very, very light. So let's turn this so you can see it. So I have my brown over here, but I added a lot of white to it. So we're going to a lot more white. And we're going to go ahead and work that into this little horn shape here. So again, this is our brown. Our brown was mixed with orange and black. And then I added white to that to make it very light, like what you see here. So just getting that main color into the shape. And then I'm going to go back around the edge of it with some black. So I cleaned off my brush. Now we're going to go in with a twirl of this black here, Mars black. A soft little transition into that paint that we just did, so it has a little bit of a soft blend. And two. And let's also do a dark charcoal gray for the nose. So a little bit of white in with the black. Okay, there's that little nose. And then I'll do a little teeny touch of white here. A little bit of reflective light on top of that nose. And then I'm going to also do a little touch of violet right over that horn for shadow. And then I'm going to do another little pop of white right over the top and brighten that back up again. All right, so that's looking really good. And now we need to go ahead and work in this really lovely, beautiful heart pattern over the top. So I've got my little bit brush. We're going to do a little bit of white with the primary magenta. I'm just going to go ahead and start to place that into the shape. Again, this was titanium white and primary magenta. We're just doing that border around the heart. And I want to make sure it's kind of thick and textural. And then let's do the turquoise in the middle, but it's got a heavier concentration of the Viridian and the white. And then we'll add a little touch of the primary cyan blue. It's a little more teal than turquoise, very vibrant. I'll place that in the middle. And you can add just a little softness of white too in there. Yeah, that is a beautiful color. Yeah, that's so pretty. I love it. All right, so I think we are done with our beautiful bison. So it's a lovely project. that taught you a lot about how to do bold, bright colors and lots of fun abstractions, some great blending techniques that we worked on. So a lot of fun. It's also a beautiful thing to do if you don't even want to have an iconic shape in here. You can also just work on the abstraction at any time, and that's a great way to do a little bit of art therapy for yourself. All right, so enjoy. All right, so that is our class today. All of the tools that you need are on our website, tipsyartist.com. So we have lots of beautiful paint kits for you. And again, all your supplies come right to your door. So we had a lovely time painting with y'all today. Y'all have a beautiful rest of the day, and we'll see you soon. Much love to y'all. Toodles.